Hey friends, Shay here. So, not the most flattering angle for light. Oh, but that's so bright. I can't do that. So, excuse the lighting. We're just doing this in the car today. I don't have my mic with me, but we're still just going to do this because this is a video I'm legitimately excited to get to you guys. So, we're filming while I have energy and feel like I look okay. So, this video is kind of celebrating the fact that I've been on YouTube 10 years this year. So, I have 10 years of best books on this channel, and I kind of want to recap and pick like my favorite one or two from every year that I've been on Booktube. So let's go ahead and get started back at the beginning in 2015. So in 2015, as I watched my favorites video back, there were two books that stood out. The main one that I'm choosing as my main pick, and then I'll have my honorable mention for this particular year. So the main pick, and the one that I still believe is a favorite 10 years later, is Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. I have reread this multiple times in the last 10 years, and I love this book. It is my favorite Sanderson novel, which is an unpopular opinion. So in this book, we're following two sisters. We have Vivenna and we have Ciri that live in the same kingdom. They're princesses. Vivenna is the oldest. Ciri is the youngest. She's kind of rebellious and not necessarily the perfect princess like her sister. So Vivenna has been promised to the God King her entire life. So she's been raised and kind of groomed, you would say, to be his bride her entire life. And at the last second, Daddy decides to play favorites and sends Ciri instead of Vivenna to the neighboring kingdom to be married to the God King. And in this, Vivenna kind of spirals. Like, her whole purpose in life is gone. And she thinks Ciri can't hack it. And so she goes on a journey to go to the neighboring kingdom to then, you know, quote unquote, save her sister. Ciri, however, is handling herself just fine. And her brash personality is actually what the God King needs in a lot of ways. I really love the relationship between Ciri and the God King. The way it starts is very interesting, and I really appreciate the growth and the breadth of their relationship development. I'm very much looking forward to finally getting the sequel, because this is supposed to be a duology, hopefully in the next 10 years, as he's taking a break from working on Stormlight. But Warbreaker is truly a fantastic place. I'm so glad it's where I started with Sanderson, honestly. Being someone who's read a lot of romance, and things like Tress of the Emerald Sea and Yumi and the Nightmare Painter weren't available for me. Warbreaker was the easiest place for me to start because at the time it was his most romance-forward book. And that is why it worked for me. And even though I've read everything he's written at this point, I know that Warbreaker is still my favorite. There is just something about all of the characters. The other two POV characters we have a man named Vasher who has a talking black sword, and he and Vivenna end up teaming up throughout the story and kind of working together at some points. And then we have Lightsong, who is a god in the kingdom where the God King lives. In this kingdom, gods are reborn essentially from people who have died, and they serve a certain purpose. People pay homage to them. This magic system is all about breath and color and life and joy, and I really love the magic system in this one in particular. So again, I stand by the fact that it's my favorite Sanderson, even though that's an unpopular opinion for most people. So I had a very special experience in the last year with Sir Sanderson and this particular book. I have talked about that before, but I'll briefly mention it here. Essentially, the Barnes & Noble I work at is Brandon Sanderson's home Barnes & Noble. So one night he was in shopping with his kids. I just helped him. When he's in the store, he likes to be treated just like a normal person, not like a famous multi-million-dollar author. And so we do. He was looking for something for his kid, and one of his children, I should say. And so I helped him find some books and some potential options. And then he came up to me afterwards. He's like, "Hey, I'm ready to sign." I'm like, "Okay, let me go grab you some Sharpies. I'll be right back." And we just kind of got chatting as he was signing. And I had talked about Frugal Wizard, and we got talking about that, and I shared my husband's opinion of Frugal Wizard with him. And he's like, that's one of the nicest things anyone's ever said to me about this book. Because it's one of, like, community-wide, it's his least appealing book to most people. Most people didn't end up enjoying it. I thought it was fun. You could definitely tell he was trying something new with it. He says he wishes he would have spent more time on it and fleshed out some things and stuff. And, I don't think it's a bad book by any means. I mean, I gave it 4 stars, so clearly it's not a bad book. But for most people on a Sanderson level, like, it's not. Anyways, moving on. He said, he's like, "So what is your husband's favorite book of mine?" I said, "Well, he loves your Stormlight Archive. That is his favorite book series of all time." And he's like, "Okay, does he have any of the leatherbounds?" I'm like, "Well, no, we don't have any of those." He's like, "Can I gift you a copy of Way of Kings?" I said, "I'm sure he would love that." And so I gave him his name, and he's like, "Okay, and what's your favorite?" I said, "Well, my favorite is an unpopular one, and it's Warbreaker." He's like, "Would you like a leatherbound of Warbreaker?" And, I said, "Well, that would be lovely. Thank you." And, he's a busy man. I was sure he was going to forget, and it's fine. Like, I wasn't worried about it, and I didn't expect it, honestly. But about a week later, his assistant comes into the store looking for me and drops off these gorgeous leatherbounds, and it was a beautiful experience. I still tear up thinking about it because it's just more proof that authors still think about the booksellers, especially Brandon, because, like, his first signing with Barnes & Noble, like, 30 people showed up. He just didn't have... It was all the booksellers that did a lot of the legwork early in his career, so he has a massive respect for them. So, anyways, storytime with Shae over. 2015 Shae loved Warbreaker. 2025 Shae still loves Warbreaker. The honorable mention for this year was The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavender. For me, this was a YA contemporary with some magical realism to it that was doing things a little bit different. The easiest way to describe this book is about Ava, who is a girl with wings, and the life she lives, and her learning about what love means. There are all different forms and types of love within this one, including a lustful one. There are some trigger warnings with this particular book. Please look those up. I believe they're listed in my Goodreads review from 10 years ago. I'm not 100% sure on that, but definitely look up triggers before diving into this one. This is one that I have reread since, and I still enjoy it. Enjoy is a hard word. Appreciate's probably a better word for it. And it was just really, really good. This is one that nobody really talks about these days, but I really think is an underrated YA title. It would probably be banned in most schools because of certain things that happen within it these days. But I highly recommend that people check it out and read it. And I thought it was beautifully told for what it was trying to do. All right, with all that out of the way, let's move on to 2016. This clip should not be as long as the previous. All right, so in 2016, again, I have 2 picks, and I don't know that I can decide between these 2. I think I would need to reread both of them to decide which is still a favorite, but I really love both of them. So we're just going to talk about both of them. So the first one is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. This was kind of the book of the moment at that time in Booktube, and it is a solidly amazing one. And this is one that I've since reread, and And I prefer the audio to the physical reading experience. The person who narrated the Harry Potter series is the one that narrates these, and so I really appreciated his narration style for it. So I would highly recommend it for that reason. But in this, we're essentially following two magicians whose masters pit them against each other in this eternal magic war, you could say. And it is actually their love story and the story of the circus that they run together. And then there's another couple outside of that you kind of get their perspectives. Anyways, the circus is mysterious. It shows up. No one knows how long it's going to be there. It's an amazing and beautiful story. I highly recommend this one for all of my days. And it's one that I still think of warmly and fondly every time I think of it. And since I have reread it, I do know that I still love this one completely. The other book from this year on my favorites list that feels tied is The Storied Life of A.J. Fikry. Now, this is a story about a man who has kind of lost everything in life. His wife has passed away, and he has this collection of poems stolen from him. Unexpectedly, a mysterious package is left in his bookstore, and from there, it's kind of his life from there. Again, this is a story that takes place over years. It's beautiful. The many book references just warm your soul and warm your heart. And I really, really love the trajectory of this story. Again, as with all Gabrielle Zevin books, you're not going to love all of the characters all of the time. It's the journey that they go on that is the big difference here. And so I highly recommend checking that out. So for 2016, I have two books that are very good but very different. And I honestly think that I would have to reread the two to see which one would win out with the other. If you're interested in seeing that, let me know down below. And I would be happy to maybe do a series of vlogs rereading my favorites over the last 10 years. With that, let's move on to 2017. "2017 was a good reading year for me, and this is the year where I realized I can never do my favorites video before January 1st, because you could finish your favorite book of the year on December 31st. And there wasn't any recency bias when I made this list of the things I read that year. This one is the one I still think about to this day, 8 years later. And that is Burial Rites by Hannah Kent. This is about a woman who was on death row in Ireland, I want to say, in another country. And as they're on death row, they end up staying with a family. And it's about her last days, essentially, before she's to be executed. This book is hauntingly beautiful. You get the flashbacks of how she ended up in the situation that she was in. And you see how she's living out her current life. And it is an amazing novel. And I have zero regrets about reading this book. It's still on my shelf. I'm desperate for a reread of it, honestly. Sorry, my friends are blowing up our group chat right now. Burial Rites is a book that I don't hear anybody talk about anymore. Again, this is another one that in 2017, at least in certain corners of Booktube, you would hear about this book quite a bit. It took me a while before I ended up biting the bullet and actually reading it, but I literally read this book within a 24-hour period. I had the day off from work, and so I ended up reading it, and I loved it. Zero regrets, 10 out of 10, and this is one that I want to reread soon. So maybe I will do a reread series of all of my favorites over the last 10 years, just because I want to reread some of them. All right, let's talk about 2018. All right. Ooh, we went crooked. Sorry. Okay, so 2018. I know this one's still one of my favorite novels of all time. I did reread this one last year, and I annotated it, and I have zero regrets. This is Archer's Voice by Mia Sheridan. I have talked about this book ad nauseum on this channel at this point. So I'm just going to refer you to my annotation vlog if you have not heard my thoughts on Archer's Voice, because this book lives rent-free in my head. It has a piece of my soul. Anytime someone comes into the bookstore and says, I want a book that's going to make me cry, my first question is, do you read romance? If the answer is yes, my first selection is always Archer's Voice, because this book will tear you out and put you back together in the best way. I love it so much. And this is about, I'm not going to tell you what it's about because I've talked about it ad nauseum again. So check out that video that I have linked. Corner? I forget which corner, whichever corner. And you can get my full thoughts there. With that, let's move on to 2019. All right, so 2019, in this spot, I'm actually going to put the entire series, but I only had the finale to the series on the list. But with this one, it's going to be the Bear and the Nightingale series. I read Winter of the Witch in 2019 and loved it. Zero regrets. This story follows, I believe her name was Agnieszka. That's what my brain says. Again, it's been a few years. This is a series I should reread. But anyway, it is deeply based in Russian folklore. And it's in that transition when their world was going on folks and myths and praying to these little gods and demons and little things. It was in its transition and introduction to Christianity. And so you have this Christian religious element to the story that's disrupting the world. And it's about her relationship with the past, and it's such a beautiful and fun series. There are some tough things that happen within it. It challenges religion, so it can make some people uncomfortable, but I really appreciate what it was all about. I think it was very well done, and I really think it was absolutely fantastic. I highly recommend checking out the series in future. With that, let's move into 2020. 2020 is the year that Dark Song by Christine Feehan came out. And this book stole my heart and kept it. To this day, this is a book that lives rent-free in my head as well. Yes, a lot of books live rent-free in my head. Don't ask questions. At the time, this is one of those books where, as a woman who was previously married in a toxic relationship, it depicted the healing process of coming out of that in a beautiful way. And I really love that the hero sung this woman awake every morning and helped her come back to herself, because that is really what my partner did for me, and I have zero regrets about that. And this book is beautiful. Yes, it is a very sexual book. This is a book about the Carpathian people. This is like book 30 plus in this series. The series can be read as standalones. They give you the information that you need within the book, so you don't have to necessarily have read them all. I mean, there's a chunk in the middle that I missed, and I still get the context from all of it. There is an overarching plot that does interconnect in arcs, so there are certain places you can start and stop easier. I can do a whole video on that if y'all want that, but you can read any of them as standalones, and Dark Song is a beautiful book about healing and love and patience, and it's done in such a beautiful way that even though not everybody loves Christine Feehan, especially a lot of her older heroes are very alpha, so I understand why people don't like her. But all of her books that have been more recent, like, so much better. She's really worked hard on that. And I really love what's going on in her novels, and Dark Song was a standout for me. And again, another series that I have zero regrets about. Dark Hope that came out this year was kind of similar in that way, but different. And I really love what she's doing in her series. So anyways, with that said, let's move on to 2021. All right, 2021. This was my introduction to a new format of novel in Danmei, or Chinese light novels. So the winner from this year is going to be Heaven Official's Blessing. This is an 8-volume light novel series that is absolutely beautiful. I describe it a lot better than I think I could right now in my best of 2021 video. I will let that speak for what it's about, but know that I love and adore it and would highly recommend it. I still recommend it in the bookstore all the time. They now have these gorgeous editions of the series, so I would recommend collecting them in the gorgeous ones if you didn't collect it originally. So, and then we will talk about 2022. Okay, 2022 is all about, seriously, I love my friends, but like, I need them to stop. 2022 is a book that I have reread maybe more than any of the books on this list because it is my comfort book right now. And that is All Roads Lead Here by Mariana Zapata. Again, this is a book that I have talked about ad nauseum on this channel. So I will leave a link to one of the videos, probably my annotation vlog, where I talk about it. Again, ad nauseum. I read it while I was traveling even, and it was just so, so good. 10 out of 10 would recommend, and it's just such a good one. Ugh, so much. I love it so dearly, and Rhodes is my OTP hero. I hate the new cover, so I still have the old cover. I don't know if she's ever done like a special edition of this one, but if she ever did or does, I will probably get that. But this is a book that means the world to me. It is a slow burn romance. It has a single father with a teenage son, and the dynamic and the way it's all built is so good. It's older characters, so we're not like in our early 20s, and it's peak perfection for me. I love it so much. Even people who don't read a lot of romance that I've recommended this book to have ended up really loving it, so that should tell you something. Since I'm just gonna give you another video to reference on that, let's move to 2023. All right, so with 2023, this is the only time I'm repeating an author on this entire list, which makes me really proud of myself. And that is because Yumi and the Nightmare Painter came out in 2023. And I love everything about this book. This takes two franchises that I love and adore and mashes them together and makes a baby, essentially. So Final Fantasy X, specifically, and Your Name are the two franchises. And it's glorious. I love it oh so much. And there is so much to love. Essentially, we have Yumi, who is essentially living the same day over and over and over again, is kind of how it feels. And then we have this young man called the Nightmare Painter, and he paints things to protect his village. And it's about them connecting through all the wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey things, and it's glorious and it's beautiful. And I love everything about this. This is a standalone in the Sanderson Cosmere, so you can kind of read it at any point. We do have kind of a quirky narrator on the side of the story that is integral to the Cosmere, so if you know, you know. And I just can't get enough of this one. We did back the Kickstarter of his secret projects, and that is why I have the pretty gorgeous edition. So with that said, let's move on to my 2024 favorite. And again, if you've been on my channel any bit of time in the last year, you probably know the answer to this, and that's The Rest of the Story by Tal Bauer. This is a hockey romance that came and stole my heart, and I didn't even know. My friends all loved this book. It took me forever to finally read it. Now that I've read it, I'm mad at them because I can't reread it again for the first time. In this, we're following two heroes, one older, one younger. The older one is kind of reaching almost hockey retirement stage, And his friend is like, hey, come be on this team. And so he ends up doing it, but when he gets to the team, he realizes that the powers that be are abusing the rookies. Physically, emotionally, treating them like garbage. And he immediately is like, excuse me, no, this is not happening. So he puts an end to it very quickly. Gets the captain of the team kicked off. And things start fresh. And the rookies start to thrive and things like that. From there, this is about him and one of the younger players having a relationship developing. When it comes to like the sexual parts of that relationship, nothing happens till later in the book, but it's beautiful. I cried multiple times. I will link the vlog where I just fall apart and fall to pieces about this book, so that you can relive my pain with me. With that said, that is the end of this video. Thank you so much for checking it out. Thank you for going on this 10-year journey with me. If you want to see more 10 years on YouTube related content, let me know down below. And with that said, if you're here just because you love me, why don't you leave your favorite spring related emoji? I'm feeling spring energy, even though it has been trying to like rain and snow the last couple of days. I'm so ready for spring. Send me all the spring vibes. So send me all those spring emojis. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.